Alright, folks, tonight we're diving deep into the Foundation's archives, specifically to unravel the enigma that is SCP 343. Picture this: you're nestled in your bed, the day's chaos finally fading away, maybe a soft glow from your nightstand lamp casting long shadows on the wall. Outside, the crickets are chirping their nightly symphony, a comforting backdrop to the strangeness we're about to explore. You're probably thinking, SCP? That sounds intense. I'm just trying to wind down. And you're right, some of these tales can get pretty wild. In fact, statistically speaking, encountering even a minor anomaly in your daily life would likely result in, well, let's just say, you probably wouldn't be around to tell the tale. So the fact that you're here, cozy and listening to this, already puts you miles ahead of the curve. So before you get too comfortable, take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the peculiar rabbit holes we explore here. And while you're at it, drop a comment sharing your location and the current time where you are. It's always fascinating to see where in the world these stories find their listeners. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on that fan for some soothing white noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing in a sterile, white hallway. The air is cool, almost clinical, and the only sound is the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. To your left and right, identical doors line the corridor, each marked with a simple number. You have no memory of how you got here, but a sense of unease settles in your stomach. You clutch a thin file in your hands, its cover simply reading SCP-343. The file contains a brief initial report. It details the discovery of an individual within the Foundation's Site-19, found wandering the halls without any identification or memory of how he arrived. He was designated SCP-343. The report notes his appearance as unremarkable, an older gentleman, seemingly of indeterminate ethnicity, with a calm and benevolent demeanor. Nothing about him initially triggered any alarms. In fact, the personnel who first encountered him described a feeling of profound peace and comfort in his presence. One of the first documented anomalies occurred during a routine interview. When asked for his origins, SCP-343 simply stated, "I am from everywhere and nowhere. I have always been." Attempts to press him for more concrete details proved fruitless. What was peculiar was the almost hypnotic effect his calm voice had on the interviewer, who later reported a strange disinclination to continue questioning that particular line. A seemingly innocuous request by SCP-343 for a specific type of tea, one not available at the facility, led to the next significant event. Moments after the request, a steaming cup of precisely that tea materialized on the table in front of him. Security footage confirmed that no one had entered or approached the room. This incident piqued the Foundation's interest considerably. Further observation revealed more instances of SCP-343's seemingly impossible abilities. He was observed manifesting small objects, such as books, flowers, and even a small, intricately carved wooden bird, seemingly out of thin air. When questioned about these occurrences, he would often simply smile and offer vague explanations, such as the universe provides, or it was needed. Interestingly, SCP-343 never made any demands or showed any signs of hostility. His requests were always simple and reasonable, and he consistently expressed gratitude for the Foundation's care. This led to a debate among the researchers. Was SCP-343 a powerful anomaly that needed strict containment, or was he something else? One detail that stood out in the early reports was the complete lack of any physiological anomalies. Medical examinations revealed a perfectly healthy human male of approximately 60 years of age, with no unusual genetic markers or internal differences. This normalcy only added to the mystery surrounding his abilities. The initial containment procedures were minimal, reflecting the uncertainty surrounding his nature. He was given a standard containment cell, furnished with a bed, a table, and a chair. However, within days, SCP-343 requested a window, stating that he enjoyed watching the outside world. Despite security concerns, the request was granted, and inexplicably, a window appeared in the solid wall of his cell overnight. Days turned into weeks, and the pattern continued. SCP-343 would make a simple request: a different book, a potted plant, a view of a particular landscape, and within a short time, his request would be fulfilled in a manner that defied explanation. Security personnel would meticulously review footage, only to find no discernible cause for these manifestations. It was as if reality itself bent slightly around him. One particularly strange incident involved a request for a visit from a specific species of rare butterfly, one native to a remote region of the Amazon rainforest. Foundation entomologists confirmed the species and its habitat as highly restricted. Yet within hours, several of these butterflies were observed fluttering around SCP-343's cell, seemingly content in their artificial environment. They vanished just as inexplicably a few days later. The lack of any threat or malicious intent from SCP-343 led to a gradual relaxation of containment protocols. He was eventually allowed to move freely within certain non-critical areas of Site-19, always under supervision, of course. Personnel interactions with him were generally positive, with many reporting a feeling of well-being and optimism after speaking with him. However, this relaxed approach was not without its detractors within the Foundation. Some senior staff members remained deeply suspicious, arguing that the very lack of overt threat could be a sophisticated form of manipulation. They pointed to the complete unknown nature of SCP-343's abilities and the potential danger of underestimating an anomaly of this magnitude. One particularly vocal skeptic, Dr. Alistair Reyes, a renowned expert in anomalous psychology, argued vehemently for stricter containment. He presented several theoretical scenarios, ranging from subtle mind control to the potential for a catastrophic reality shift originating from SCP-343. His arguments, though logical and well-reasoned, often fell on deaf ears, especially among personnel who had direct contact with the anomaly. A curious detail emerged from the interviews conducted with SCP-343. On several occasions, when asked about the Foundation and its purpose, he would offer cryptic remarks such as, "You are doing important work, though perhaps you worry too much," or, "The walls you build are not always the ones that keep things out." These statements, while seemingly benign, added another layer of intrigue to his enigmatic nature. It's a well-established fact within the SCP universe that the Foundation deals with entities and phenomena that defy conventional understanding of science and reality. SCP-343 was a prime example of this. an anomaly whose very existence challenged the Foundation's established protocols and threat assessment models. One particularly bizarre incident involved a junior researcher accidentally spilling coffee on SCP-343's clothing. Before the researcher could even apologize profusely, the stain vanished without a trace. When the researcher stammered an explanation, SCP-343 simply chuckled and said, "Accidents happen. The universe has a way of tidying up." As time went on, SCP-343 became something of an open secret within Site-19. Personnel would occasionally seek him out for advice, or simply for his calming presence. There were even rumors of minor miracles occurring around him, a persistent headache suddenly vanishing, a lost item reappearing in an unexpected place. These incidents were never officially documented, often dismissed as coincidence or wishful thinking, but they contributed to the growing mystique surrounding SCP-343. However, the lack of any concrete understanding of his abilities remained a significant concern for the Foundation's higher echelons. Was he truly benevolent, or was this an elaborate facade? What were the limits of his power, and what were his ultimate intentions, if any? These questions continued to plague the minds of researchers and security personnel alike. One particularly unsettling theory, proposed by a fringe group of researchers, suggested that SCP-343 might not be contained by the Foundation at all, but rather the other way around. Perhaps his presence within Site-19 served some unknown purpose, a silent agreement, or a cosmic game being played on a scale beyond human comprehension. This theory, while highly speculative, highlighted the fundamental uncertainty surrounding the anomaly. It's a strange detail, but SCP-343 never seemed to require food or water. Despite regular offers, he would politely decline, stating that he had no need for sustenance. This further added to the list of unanswered questions about his physiology and nature. The debate surrounding SCP-343's containment, or lack thereof, reached a boiling point after an incident involving a containment breach of a highly dangerous Keter-class anomaly. During the ensuing chaos, SCP-343 was observed calmly sitting in his cell, seemingly unaffected by the pandemonium around him. Some personnel later reported a feeling of inexplicable calm washing over them as they passed his cell, a brief respite from the terror of the breach. This event further divided opinions, with some seeing it as evidence of his benevolent nature, and others viewing it as a disturbing indifference to the potential for widespread destruction. One academic argument that frequently arose in Foundation discussions centered on the very definition of containment when dealing with an entity like SCP-343. Could an entity that seemed capable of altering reality at will truly be contained in the conventional sense? Or was the Foundation merely observing him, a passive participant in his enigmatic existence? Adding to the strangeness, SCP-343 occasionally made predictions, seemingly innocuous comments about future events within the facility. These predictions were often vague and open to interpretation, but a surprising number of them eventually came to pass, ranging from minor equipment malfunctions to personnel transfers. This raised the question of whether he possessed some form of precognitive ability, or if his reality-bending powers extended to influencing future events. You find yourself reviewing a series of interview logs the pages filled with transcripts of conversations between Foundation personnel and SCP-343. His responses are often philosophical, sometimes cryptic, and rarely provide any concrete answers to the fundamental questions surrounding his existence. Yet there's a consistent undercurrent of kindness and wisdom in his words. In one notable interview, Dr. Reyes, still deeply skeptical, directly confronted SCP-343 about his abilities. You can manifest objects, alter your surroundings, seemingly at will. What is the source of this power? He asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. SCP-343 simply smiled gently and replied, "The source of all things is within all things, Doctor. You seek to understand with your mind, but perhaps some things are best understood with the heart." Another interview detailed an encounter with a distraught D-Class personnel who had recently experienced a personal tragedy. SCP-343 listened patiently, offering words of comfort and understanding. The D-Class subject later reported feeling a profound sense of peace and acceptance after the interaction, a feeling that lingered long after the conversation ended. This raised ethical questions within the Foundation about the potential therapeutic applications of SCP-343's presence, a notion quickly dismissed by those concerned about the risks. One particularly odd incident involved a request from SCP-343 for a specific type of classical music to be played in his cell. When the request was fulfilled, security personnel monitoring the audio feed reported hearing the music not only within his cell, but also faintly echoing in the surrounding hallways, even in areas with no speakers. This phenomenon ceased as soon as the music was turned off. It's a strange truth that the Foundation, in its pursuit of understanding and containing the anomalous, often encounters entities that defy any logical framework. SCP-343 was a constant reminder of the limitations of human comprehension when faced with the truly extraordinary. The debate about SCP-343's true nature took a bizarre turn when a group of researchers proposed the God hypothesis. This theory, largely dismissed by the scientific community within the Foundation, suggested that SCP-343 might be some form of deity or cosmic entity, his abilities stemming from a source far beyond human understanding. While there was no empirical evidence to support this claim, the sheer inexplicability of his powers made it difficult to entirely dismiss. One unsettling aspect of SCP-343 was his apparent awareness of events within the Foundation that he should not have known. On several occasions, he made oblique references to classified projects or internal disputes, information that was supposedly restricted to only the highest levels of clearance. When questioned about these insights, he would simply offer enigmatic smiles and vague pronouncements. Adding to the mystery, SCP-343 seemed to have a peculiar affinity for children. On the rare occasions when children were present at Site-19, usually the offspring of personnel during special events, he would often gravitate towards them, engaging them in gentle conversation and occasionally manifesting small, harmless toys. These interactions were always closely monitored, but no negative effects were ever observed. The Foundation's attempts to understand the limits of SCP-343's abilities often led to dead ends. Direct experimentation proved difficult, as he would often politely refuse to participate in tests that he deemed unnecessary or potentially harmful. When he did agree, the results were invariably inconclusive, often defying the very principles of physics and reality. One such experiment involved attempting to move SCP-343 to a different containment cell. As the security team approached his cell, the door inexplicably sealed shut from the inside. All attempts to override the locking mechanism failed. After a few hours, the door simply unlocked on its own, and SCP-343 was found sitting calmly inside, reading a book that had not been present before. He offered no explanation for the event. Another attempt involved introducing various anomalous objects into his cell to observe any reactions. While SCP-343 showed mild interest in some of the objects, there were no discernible interactions or effects. In one instance, a highly reactive object known for its unpredictable energy emissions remained completely inert in his presence. This led some researchers to speculate that SCP-343 might possess some form of passive nullification field. It's a strange side note that SCP-343 always referred to the Foundation personnel by their first names, even those he had only met briefly. He seemed to possess an uncanny ability to know details about individuals without ever being formally introduced to them. The internal debates within the Foundation regarding SCP-343 grew increasingly polarized. One faction, advocating for continued relaxed containment, argued that his benevolent nature and lack of any hostile actions over a significant period were sufficient evidence of his harmlessness. They pointed to the potential benefits of studying him in a less restrictive environment, arguing that fear and distrust might be counterproductive. The opposing faction, however, remained firm in their stance that the Foundation's primary duty was containment and security, regardless of an anomaly's apparent demeanor. They emphasized the inherent unpredictability of anomalous phenomena and the potential for unforeseen consequences if SCP-343's true nature and abilities were not fully understood. Dr. Reyes became the de facto spokesperson for this viewpoint, tirelessly presenting his concerns to the O5 Council. One particularly unsettling incident involved a security guard who claimed to have witnessed SCP-343 walking through a solid wall. The guard, a veteran with an impeccable service record, insisted on his account, but security footage showed no such event. The incident was ultimately dismissed as a hallucination brought on by stress, but it fueled the anxieties of those who believed SCP-343 posed a greater threat than perceived. The academic discourse surrounding SCP-343 often touched upon the philosophical implications of his existence. Was he an anomaly within reality, or was reality itself anomalous in his presence? Did the Foundation's attempts to categorize and contain him reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of his nature? These questions lingered, unanswered, and perhaps unanswerable. Over time, SCP-343's legend within the Foundation grew. Stories, both factual and embellished, circulated among personnel. Some whispered of miraculous healings after brief encounters with him. Others spoke of profound moments of clarity and insight gained from his cryptic pronouncements. He became an almost mythical figure within the sterile walls of Site-19, a beacon of calm in a world of terrifying anomalies. However, the higher levels of the Foundation remained cautious. The O5 Council, the enigmatic body that oversees the entire SCP Foundation, continued to monitor SCP-343 closely. Despite the lack of any hostile actions, his sheer potential for reality alteration could not be ignored. Contingency plans, however theoretical, were constantly being revised and updated. One particularly strange aspect of SCP-343's containment was his apparent awareness of these contingency plans. On several occasions, he made oblique references to them during conversations with researchers, often with a hint of amusement in his tone. "You build your houses with strong walls," he once remarked to a bewildered Dr. Reyes, "but sometimes the wind blows right through them." It's a curious fact that despite his seemingly limitless abilities, SCP-343 never attempted to breach containment or express any desire to leave the Foundation's care. When asked about this, he would often reply that he was content where he was, that he had seen enough of the outside world throughout his long existence. The debate about SCP-343's classification also remained unresolved. While initially classified as safe due to his lack of hostility, some argued for a reclassification to Euclid or even Thaumiel, given the unknown nature and potential scope of his abilities. Thaumiel classification is reserved for anomalies that the Foundation uses to contain other anomalies, a concept that some found disturbingly plausible in SCP-343's case. One unsettling theory that gained some traction among the more paranoid elements within the Foundation suggested that SCP-343 was deliberately allowing himself to be contained, perhaps for some unknown long-term purpose. They speculated that his apparent benevolence might be a carefully constructed act, a way to lull the Foundation into a false sense of security. Adding to the enigma, SCP-343 occasionally requested specific personnel to visit him, individuals who were often going through personal crises or facing difficult decisions. His conversations with these individuals were always private, and the content was never fully disclosed. However, those who had these encounters often reported feeling a renewed sense of purpose or finding unexpected solutions to their problems. You are now reviewing the most recent reports on SCP-343, the narrative shifting slightly as the Foundation grapples with the increasing complexity of his existence. The initial simplicity of easiest containment has long since been replaced by a profound sense of the unknown. One recent incident involved a catastrophic failure in Site-19's power grid, plunging several sectors into darkness. Amidst the chaos, SCP-343's containment cell remained illuminated by a soft, inexplicable glow. Security personnel reported a feeling of calm emanating from his cell, a stark contrast to the panic elsewhere in the facility. When power was eventually restored, the glow vanished without a trace. Another report detailed a request from SCP-343 for a meeting with the O5 Council. The request was met with considerable debate, but was ultimately granted, albeit under heavy security. The details of the meeting remain highly classified, but rumors suggest that SCP-343 offered cryptic advice and insights into several ongoing containment breaches, information that proved surprisingly accurate. It's a strange anomaly within an anomaly that SCP-343 seemed to possess a level of awareness and understanding that transcended the Foundation's own knowledge of the anomalous world. He often spoke of events and entities that the Foundation had yet to encounter, hinting at a reality far more vast and complex than they could comprehend. The God hypothesis resurfaced with renewed vigor after the O5 Council meeting. Some within the Foundation, privy to fragments of information from the encounter, began to seriously consider the possibility that SCP-343 was indeed something far beyond a typical anomaly. The implications of containing or believing they were containing such an entity were staggering. One particularly unsettling development was SCP-343's increasing interest in the Foundation's ethics and protocols. He began posing questions to researchers about the morality of their containment procedures, the treatment of D-Class personnel, and the potential consequences of their actions. These questions, while seemingly philosophical, often struck at the core of the Foundation's operational principles. Adding to the mystery, SCP-343 began to subtly alter his containment cell. Walls would shift slightly, new features would appear overnight, only to vanish days later. These changes were never drastic or disruptive, but they served as a constant reminder of his underlying power and the Foundation's ultimate lack of control. The academic discussions surrounding SCP-343 now centered on the very nature of reality and perception. Could an entity capable of manipulating reality also manipulate the Foundation's perception of it? Was their understanding of SCP-343 based on objective observation, or were they seeing only what he allowed them to see? One final unsettling report details an incident where a researcher, during a routine interview, asked SCP-343 directly if he was God. SCP-343 simply smiled, a knowing, gentle smile, and replied, "Am I? Or are you?" The researcher reported feeling a profound sense of unease and a sudden questioning of his own reality after this exchange. Relaxation section, approximately 300 words. The hum of the fluorescent lights fades into a softer, more ambient sound, almost like the gentle lapping of waves against a distant shore. The sterile white walls of the Foundation seem to soften, the sharp edges blurring into a more comforting, less defined space. You can feel the tension in your shoulders easing, the tightness in your jaw releasing. Just allow your breath to become slow and steady, each inhale a gentle wave washing over you, each exhale carrying away any lingering thoughts or anxieties. The stories we explore here, these glimpses into the strange and the unknown, can sometimes stir the imagination in ways that linger. But now, let those images drift away like wisps of smoke in a calm breeze. There's no need to hold on to them, no need to analyze or understand them further tonight. Let your mind become like a still pond, reflecting only the quiet peace of this moment. Imagine a soft, warm light enveloping you, a feeling of safety and tranquility washing over you. The sounds of the night outside your window become a soothing lullaby, each cricket chirp and gentle rustle of leaves, a comforting reminder of the natural world around you. Allow yourself to sink deeper into your pillow, feeling the soft support beneath you. There is nothing you need to do right now, nowhere you need to be. Simply allow yourself to be still, to be present, and to drift gently towards sleep. All right, folks, tonight we are diving deep into the enigmatic world of the SCP Foundation, specifically focusing on an anomaly that hums with an almost primordial power, SCP-407, also known as the Song of Genesis. Imagine for a moment the quiet hum of your refrigerator, the gentle whir of your computer fan, maybe even the distant drone of traffic outside your window. Now amplify that feeling of pervasive, subtle sound, but imbue it with the very essence of life and growth. You're probably thinking, sounds kind of nice, right? Well, you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes in the same room with the uncontained version of this thing. Just a friendly heads up. So before you get too comfortable, nestled in your blankets, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the strange little corners of the internet we explore here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where in the world these stories find their listeners. Now dim those lights, turn on that fan for some comforting white noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing in a sterile observation chamber, the cool metallic scent of the room subtly clinging to the air. Before you is a reinforced glass window, beyond which lies a containment cell. Inside, resting on a simple metal pedestal, is what appears to be an ordinary CD. It's labeled simply SCP-407. Nothing about its appearance suggests the profound and potentially catastrophic effects it holds. A small speaker system is mounted in the corner of the cell, currently silent. You can see a faint layer of what looks like moss or algae slowly creeping up the walls of the containment chamber, a subtle testament to the object's influence, even in its dormant state. Your briefing files detail the initial discovery of SCP-407. It was found in an abandoned music archive in rural Kentucky, discovered by a group of local teenagers exploring the dilapidated building. The teenagers reported feeling an unusual sense of peace and well-being while in the vicinity of the CD, a feeling that intensified when one of them, out of curiosity, played it on an old boombox they found. What followed was unusual. The dead vegetation around the archive began to show signs of life, with long dormant seeds sprouting and withered plants regaining their vibrancy at an unnatural speed. The teenagers, initially amazed, quickly became frightened as the growth became more aggressive and uncontrolled, forcing them to flee. Local authorities were alerted, and eventually, the SCP Foundation stepped in to contain the anomaly. One of the first researchers to study SCP-407 noted in their report the almost melodic quality of the sound emanating from the CD when played, despite lacking any discernible musical structure. It was described as a constant, low-frequency hum, interspersed with occasional clicks and rustling sounds, almost like the susurrus of a vast unseen forest. This auditory phenomenon seemed to directly influence biological processes in a way that defied conventional scientific understanding. Foundation scientists quickly established that exposure to the song caused rapid and often chaotic biological growth in plant and animal life. This growth wasn't necessarily beneficial. In fact, it frequently resulted in grotesque mutations and the proliferation of aggressive, rapidly evolving organisms. You remember reading a particularly disturbing account of a test involving a common houseplant placed in proximity to SCP-407 while it was playing. Within hours, the plant had grown several meters in height, its leaves expanding to the size of dinner plates, and its root system bursting through its container and spreading across the floor. More disturbingly, The plant began to develop thorn-like protrusions that secreted a highly corrosive acid. This uncontrolled and violent growth underscored the immense danger posed by SCP-407 if it were ever to be released into the wider environment. The Foundation's initial attempts at understanding the mechanism behind SCP-407's effects were met with considerable frustration. Standard biological and acoustic analyses yielded no conventional explanation for the accelerated and mutated growth. The sound waves produced by the CD didn't carry any discernible genetic information or growth hormones. Instead, it seemed to act as a kind of catalyst, somehow unlocking or overriding the natural biological constraints of living organisms. Some early theories proposed that the sound might be interacting with cellular membranes at a quantum level, stimulating rapid cell division and differentiation in unpredictable ways. However, these remained largely speculative. One particularly unsettling discovery was the effect of SCP-407 on animal life. While plants exhibited rapid and often monstrous growth, animals exposed to the song underwent equally disturbing transformations. In one documented experiment, a laboratory mouse exposed to SCP-407 for a prolonged period developed multiple limbs. Its internal organs grew to disproportionate sizes, and it exhibited highly aggressive behavior before succumbing to its own rapid and unsustainable biological changes. The implications for human exposure were terrifying. Even short-term exposure was shown to cause accelerated hair and nail growth, increased metabolic rates, and in some cases, the development of benign tumors. Longer exposures were deemed too dangerous for ethical testing. A peculiar detail noted by researchers was the seemingly soothing effect the initial exposure to SCP-407 had on human subjects. Many reported a feeling of profound relaxation, a sense of connection to nature, and even mild euphoria while the song played. This initial calming effect, however, was invariably followed by the onset of the more disturbing physiological changes. This duality, the initial tranquility followed by biological chaos, added another layer to the anomaly's unsettling nature. It was as if the song was lulling its listeners into a false sense of security before unleashing its transformative power. There's an ongoing debate among Foundation researchers regarding the origin and nature of SCP-407. One prevailing theory posits that it is an extra-dimensional artifact, perhaps a byproduct of some unknown biological or sonic technology from a reality operating under different physical laws. Another, more esoteric hypothesis suggests that SCP-407 might be a form of sentient entity, its song being a form of communication or even a terraforming process gone awry. These theories, however, remain firmly in the realm of speculation, as concrete evidence supporting either is lacking. You glance back at the CD on its pedestal. It sits there silently, an unassuming object that holds the potential for widespread ecological disaster. The faint green film on the walls of its containment cell serves as a constant reminder of its latent power. You can almost feel the weight of the unknown surrounding this anomaly, the countless unanswered questions about its purpose, its origin, and the true extent of its capabilities. The containment procedures for SCP-407 are stringent and constantly under review. The CD itself is stored in a Class 4 containment chamber at Site Jijorose shielded against electromagnetic interference and monitored by multiple redundant audio and visual recording systems. Access to the chamber is strictly limited to personnel with Level 3 clearance or higher, and any interaction with SCP-407 requires explicit authorization from the site director. Playback of the CD is only permitted under controlled laboratory conditions with multiple layers of biological and environmental safeguards in place. Any biological samples exposed to SCP-407 are immediately incinerated following analysis, and the containment chamber undergoes thorough sterilization protocols after each experiment. A particularly challenging aspect of containing SCP-407 is its subtle, almost imperceptible influence. Even in its dormant state, the CD seems to emit a very low-frequency resonance that can be detected by highly sensitive equipment. While this resonance doesn't trigger the rapid growth associated with playback, some researchers have theorized that prolonged exposure to it might have subtle, long-term effects on living organisms. This has led to the implementation of strict time limits for personnel working in the vicinity of the containment chamber. One incident in the Foundation's history serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by SCP-407. A junior researcher, fascinated by the anomaly, attempted to study it in his off hours, secretly bringing a small recording device into the containment chamber. He intended to capture the low-frequency resonance for independent analysis. However, during one of his clandestine visits, the recording device malfunctioned, emitting a brief burst of static that somehow interacted with SCP-407. The result was a localized but intense surge of biological growth within the chamber. The researcher was severely injured by rapidly expanding fungal growths and aggressive thorny vines that erupted from the floor. The incident led to a significant tightening of security protocols and a renewed emphasis on the unpredictable nature of SCP-407. Despite the inherent risks, research into SCP-407 continues, driven by the potential understanding it could offer into the fundamental mechanisms of biological growth and evolution. Some scientists believe that deciphering the language of the song could unlock revolutionary advancements in fields like agriculture and medicine, allowing for controlled and beneficial manipulation of biological processes. However, this potential is constantly weighed against the catastrophic consequences that could arise from a containment breach or a misunderstanding of the anomaly's true capabilities. You consider the implications of an object like SCP-407 existing in the world, a simple CD capable of unleashing biological chaos on an unimaginable scale. It makes you think about the delicate balance of nature and the potential for forces beyond our comprehension to disrupt that balance in profound and terrifying ways. The silence emanating from the containment cell is deceptive, a pregnant pause before a potential symphony of uncontrolled growth and mutation. Days turn into weeks as you delve deeper into the history and documentation surrounding SCP-407. You spend hours reviewing archived reports, experiment logs, and even some unsettling audio recordings of the song under controlled playback. The more you learn, the more you realize the sheer scope of the Foundation's efforts to understand and contain this deceptively simple artifact. One recurring theme in the research is the apparent lack of any discernible pattern or structure in the rapid biological changes induced by SCP-407, while the song consistently triggers accelerated growth. The specific manifestations of this growth seem almost random. The same species of plant exposed to the song in separate experiments might exhibit wildly different mutations, some grotesque and debilitating, others seemingly benign, at least initially. This unpredictability makes it incredibly difficult to develop any countermeasures, or even to fully categorize the potential threats posed by the anomaly. You recall reading about one experiment involving a controlled ecosystem within a sealed terrarium. When SCP-407 was played at a low volume near the terrarium, the initial effects were subtle. The plants grew slightly faster, and the insect population seemed to thrive. However, over time, the ecosystem descended into chaos. Certain plant species began to grow at an exponential rate, choking out others. Insects mutated into larger, more aggressive forms, disrupting the food chain. Eventually, the entire terrarium was overrun by a bizarre, rapidly evolving jungle of interconnected and often hostile organisms. This experiment highlighted the potential for SCP-407 to destabilize entire ecosystems with terrifying efficiency. Another unsettling aspect of SCP-407 is its apparent ability to influence dormant biological material. Researchers discovered that even long-dead organic matter, such as preserved insects or fossilized plant fragments, exhibited signs of renewed biological activity when exposed to the song for extended periods. While this activity didn't result in full resurrection, it manifested as subtle cellular changes and the release of unusual organic compounds. This suggested that SCP-407's influence might extend beyond living organisms, tapping into some fundamental aspect of biological organization. There's a persistent rumor circulating within the Foundation, one that isn't officially documented, but is whispered among some of the more tenured researchers. It suggests that the Song of Genesis isn't merely an anomalous artifact, but a fragment of something larger, perhaps even a form of primordial life force, or a remnant of a long-lost ecosystem from another reality. Some proponents of this theory point to the seemingly organic and fluid nature of the song itself, its lack of artificial structure, and its profound connection to biological processes. However, hard evidence for this remains elusive. You come across a heavily redacted report detailing an incident involving prolonged exposure to SCP-407 by a research team. The report is fragmented and filled with blacked-out sections, but you manage to piece together a disturbing narrative. The team, initially studying the song's effects on cellular regeneration, became increasingly erratic and obsessed with their work. They began exhibiting accelerated physical changes, including rapid aging and the development of unusual skin growths. The report hints at a loss of cognitive function and a growing dependence on the song itself. The final entry ends abruptly with a chilling note about the researchers attempting to merge with the anomaly. The subsequent containment breach required extreme measures and resulted in significant casualties. This incident serves as a grim reminder of the potential for SCP-407 to exert not only biological but also psychological influence. The Foundation has explored various methods of neutralizing or at least mitigating the effects of SCP-407, but none have proven entirely successful. Attempts to disrupt the sonic frequencies produced by the CD with counter frequencies have yielded unpredictable and often dangerous results, sometimes amplifying the anomalous growth or causing violent bursts of energy. Physical destruction of the CD has also been deemed too risky, as it is theorized that the song might not be entirely contained within the physical object itself, but could exist as some form of resonant energy field. One particularly bizarre line of research involved attempting to introduce other sonic anomalies into the containment chamber in the hope that they might interfere with SCP-407's effects. SCP-343, for example, a cognitohazardous sound that induces feelings of intense dread, was briefly introduced. The results were inconclusive, with neither anomaly appearing to significantly affect the other. This experiment, however, led to several researchers requiring psychological evaluation after prolonged exposure to the combined auditory assault. Another approach focused on attempting to understand the language of the song. Linguists, biologists, and even cryptographers were brought in to analyze the complex patterns of frequencies, clicks, and rustling sounds. Some theorized that the song might contain a form of biological instruction code, a set of sonic triggers that activate and direct cellular growth. However, despite years of analysis, no discernible linguistic or biological patterns have been identified. The song remains an incomprehensible yet potent force. You consider the ethical implications of studying an anomaly like SCP-407. The potential for scientific breakthrough is undeniable, but the risks involved are equally profound. The possibility of accidental release, the unpredictable nature of its effects, and the potential for catastrophic ecological damage weigh heavily on the Foundation's decisions regarding research protocols. The containment of SCP-407 is not merely about securing a dangerous object, it's about safeguarding the delicate balance of the natural world from an unknown and potentially unstoppable force. There's a persistent unease that settles over you as you delve deeper into the SCP-407 files. It's the feeling that you're not just studying an object, but something ancient and fundamentally alien, something that operates on principles far beyond human comprehension. The Song of Genesis evokes a sense of primordial power, a force that predates human civilization and perhaps even the current laws of nature as we understand them. You find yourself focusing on the more recent developments in SCP-407 research, particularly the Foundation's attempts to understand its potential long-term effects and any possible connections to other anomalous phenomena. There's a growing concern that SCP-407 might not be an isolated anomaly, but rather a component of a larger, more complex system. One intriguing line of inquiry involves the study of biological anomalies that exhibit accelerated growth or unusual evolutionary patterns. Researchers are investigating whether there are any sonic signatures or other indicators that might link these anomalies to SCP-407. While no definitive connections have been established, the possibility remains that the Song of Genesis could be influencing other anomalous entities in subtle or as yet undetected ways. You come across a series of reports detailing experiments involving the introduction of inert materials into SCP-407's containment chamber during playback. Surprisingly, some of these materials, particularly organic polymers and certain types of crystals, exhibited subtle structural changes after prolonged exposure to the song. This suggests that SCP-407's influence might extend beyond living organisms, potentially affecting the fundamental organization of matter at a molecular level. The implications of this are staggering, hinting at a far more pervasive and fundamental power than initially understood. There's a highly classified project underway, codenamed Project Nightingale, which focuses on the potential for SCP-407 to be weaponized. The ethical implications are fiercely debated within the Foundation's Overseer Council, but the potential strategic advantage of being able to induce rapid and chaotic biological growth in enemy territory is undeniable. However, the unpredictable nature of SCP-407's effects makes weaponization an incredibly risky proposition, with the potential for unintended and catastrophic consequences. The project remains in its early stages, with research focused on attempting to isolate and control specific aspects of the song's influence. One particularly unsettling theory gaining traction among some researchers is the idea that SCP-407 might be a form of terraforming agent, perhaps sent by an extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional entity to reshape Earth's biosphere according to an alien design. This theory is fueled by the song's apparent focus on biological growth and its ability to override natural evolutionary processes. While purely speculative, it raises disturbing questions about the potential long-term goals of whatever created or unleashed SCP-407. You reflect on the sheer improbability of SCP-407. A simple CD capable of wielding such immense biological power seems to defy all known laws of science. Yet it exists, contained within the sterile walls of a Foundation facility, a constant reminder of the vastness of the unknown and the potential for reality to deviate in profound and terrifying ways. The silence of the contained anomaly is a deceptive calm, a pregnant stillness before a potential storm of uncontrolled biological evolution. The responsibility of understanding and containing such a force weighs heavily on the Foundation, a silent vigil against a potential ecological apocalypse. The history of SCP-407 is a testament to the Foundation's ongoing struggle to comprehend the incomprehensible, to categorize the unclassifiable, and to contain the uncontainable. It's a story of initial discovery, escalating understanding of the threat, and the constant, unwavering effort to safeguard humanity and the natural world from an anomaly that hums with the very essence of life, twisted into something alien and dangerous. Now, let your mind begin to drift. The weight of the information, the strange and unsettling nature of SCP-407 can slowly fade into the background. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest as you breathe. The air in your room might feel cool against your skin, or perhaps it's warm and comforting. Allow yourself to sink deeper into your pillow, the soft fabric cradling your head. The sounds around you might soften, the distant hum of the night becoming a gentle lullaby. Imagine the faint green glow within SCP-407's containment cell slowly dimming, the potent energy within subsiding into a quiet stillness. The rapid, chaotic growth it induces begins to slow, the vibrant, uncontrolled life receding. Think of a forest after a gentle rain, the air clean and still, the leaves softly dripping. Your thoughts can become like those raindrops, falling gently and without urgency. Let the images of mutated plants and rapidly evolving organisms fade away, replaced by a sense of calm and quietude. The mysteries of SCP-407 can wait until another time. For now, allow yourself this moment of peace, this gentle descent into sleep. Good night,